cut off near the most southern tip of the African continent, an island chosen for one reason: its isolation. Nelson Mandela described it as a prison within a prison, a harsh regime where racism ruled. This man, Ahmed Kathrada, was to become a confidant of Mandela. They were political prisoners under the system of apartheid, where white guards used heavy repression.
The only time we were allowed out is when a warder, an armed warder, is on the catwalk training his gun on us, because they had been indoctrinated to believe that we were irresponsible terrorists, but they wouldn't come with a gun near us in case we pounce on them and take their gun. So that's what they really believed. So it took some time for them to get used to the idea that we were just ordinary human beings like them.
The leaders of the struggle were held here in Block B. Back then, one cell was marked N. Mandela Prisoner 466, followed by 64, the year he arrived. Most of Nelson Mandela's solitude was spent inside this tiny cell. The first thing that strikes you is how tiny it is. This, all there was for sanitation, a bucket. And imagine trying to use this as a bed in extreme temperatures of cold and heat. Some blankets and a mat. And the view from here, well, it's bleak. A blank wall and a courtyard. For 18 of his 27 years in imprisonment, Nelson Mandela lived in this cell.
It's difficult to imagine that we spent 18 years here.
Did you see a change in Nelson Mandela?
I have recently read somewhere that he became softer, and that this whole concept of forgiveness, reconciliation, was born in prison because he became softer. That is not true. The policy of forgiveness, reconciliation, and non-racialism was always ANC policy, so that it didn't take prison to do that.
The regime tried to play down how badly it was treating the ANC prisoners. This photograph was a staged event. You didn't know this was taken, did you?
No, we didn't know that this photograph was taken.
The government was trying to make the world think Mandela was only doing light work. The prisoners had wondered why, for one day only, the labouring became easy. But it was to get even tougher later. The labouring moved to what was then an open lime quarry. 13 years of hard toil, breaking rock, the dazzling reflection of white stone damaging their eyesights. When they weren't labouring, they were sometimes allowed visits in this gloomy building. Mandela's second wife, Winnie, an activist herself, came under a travel ban. At one stage, Mandela waited 2 years between her visits. By regulation, there was a minimum of 6 months between each visit. And also by regulation, there was no contact. A screen between husband and wife. Winnie would sit this side, a communication through a speaker. A maximum of a 30-minute conversation, not a second more, and every word of it bugged.
Obviously, they didn't record all the prisoners. They recorded Mandela without fail, and a few of us now and then. Mandela is inscrutable. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to guess what's going on inside. Very, very difficult. Naturally, he must have felt things. I mean, after all, he's a human being like us, but he doesn't show it.
Outside, the violence was increasing. Nothing was known of the Soweto uprising for 3 months, when new arrivals at the prison brought the news, and with it, a new anger.
They were impatient. They were very brave, very, very courageous, but they wanted to fight. They wanted to fight physically in prison against the warders. So we had to talk to them and dissuade them from whatever. And it took a bit of time, but we succeeded.
Was Mandela forceful in that regard?
Oh, and very much so. I mean, you know, he and Mr. Sisulu were the leaders, you could say. Sisulu was the father figure. They complement each other. They were different type of personalities.
If you called Sisulu the father, then what would Nelson Mandela be?
He'd be the elder brother, sort of.
The elder brother, in captivity, resolute yet calm in his defiance, challenging procedures, rejecting intimidation, qualities that helped make him become the President of South Africa. So how will his fellow prisoner remember him?
I'd say he was very courageous, selfless, with tremendous foresight, political foresight, prepared to sacrifice everything for what he considered to be the cause of the people, of all the oppressed people of this country. So he had tremendous foresight, not only in regard to South Africa, but internationally as well. A very caring, compassionate person. He would put his own personal concerns into the back burner when he sees that his first duty is towards his fellow prisoners. And that you saw over and over again. He had problems, I mean, his family, there were detentions, there were pannings and all that. He never allowed that to interfere with what he considered to be his responsibility towards us. So he went through everything with us, and that was characteristic of him.
One characteristic of many that matured while he suffered all the years of hardship on this island. They set out to break him here, but what happened was quite the reverse. One important stage in the making of a remarkable man. Andrew Simmons, Al Jazeera, Robben Island.